All right. Today we're going to be looking at some of the Civil 3D grading. It'll be a first in series training session. Basically, we're going to be working around a site plan that has several buildings laid out around the site, the roadway, a couple roadways in there. Someone has already kind of developed the design, so we've got some basic elevations in our drawing kind of laid out for us. They're not really elevated, but they're just a guideline so that we can kind of get an idea of how we want to grade the site. So we're going to take some of that and some of the feature line abilities that we have inside of Civil 3D, and we're going to go ahead and create this grading plan. Basically, this first series, we're going to start off with working with feature lines. We're going to do a little bit of a feature line in the roadway, show you how to do a grading object and building envelope, and bring that back into the site and push that into the surface as well. We're going to be using grading objects to define back a curb and gutter, things like that. Next series is that we'll be working with will be more sidewalk, continue to build on what we've learned today. We'll work with grading objects for potential basins, that sort of thing as well. And then we'll also talk a little bit about how to spot elevate the surface when we have the grading plan, site plan, tin surface done. So anyhow, we're going to switch over and start working with the drawing. So if you do have questions, please give me a call or email me. I'll be happy to continue to help. Thank you. All right, we are looking at a drawing here. I believe it's a condo uh, site plan layout. The site plan also has some intentions for grading, slopes, spot elevations, and that sort of thing. So you can kind of see some of the slopes that we're looking at, maybe cross slopes, looks like it's inverted slope, the spot elevations, that sort of thing. There's also some building information in here as well. We're talking about the finished floor elevation along with the slope within the garage. I believe that's about 20 feet back. We have some slope outside the garage. And we have some sort of step, a quarter foot step between the garage area to the finished floor. So you can kind of see that in the building envelopes here. Again, these green and purple are kind of the idea behind what we're trying to achieve for the site. So what we're going to first start off with is some of the feature lines commands, and what we're going to do is create feature lines along some of the gutter area, and then we'll continue to build those feature lines in and around the envelope of the building, that sort of thing. And then after that, we'll look at some of the other grading options that we have to maybe help us build off of that gutter feature line, the building, that sort of thing. So what we'll do first and foremost is we'll set up our environment. Since we know we're going to be working with feature lines, we're going to go in and look at some of the feature line commands, maybe get some sites set up so that we can house some of these features, things like that. So what we're going to do is we'll go up to our tool space. Again, tool space is the area where it holds all your data that you're creating, and it holds all the settings and styles as well. So we'll go to tool space, and inside of tool space, we will look at some of the commands for feature lines, and we'll set those up for what we're trying to do here today. And we'll also look at the sites as well. So we'll get those sites set up, get the commands set up, so that way when we are working and creating the feature lines, they're going on the correct site and they have the correct styles and settings. So the first thing I want to do is I want to set up a site for the grading feature lines that we're going to be putting inside the roadway. They'll be finished ground. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to go inside the Prospector tab of Tool Space, and we're going to go down to the Site or Sites area or category, and we're going to go ahead and expand that. It looks like we've already got a site number 1 in here. What I'd like to do is either A, create a new one, or rename this one. So I think we'll go ahead and just rename the one we've got. I'm going to go to the Properties. Instead of calling that Site 1, I'm going to rename it, and we'll call it Finish Grade Site. And I like to add descriptions so I know what they're for. Other people can understand it easier with a description, that sort of thing. So I'm just going to say this is finished ground design site grading, something to that effect. We'll hit OK. And now what we'll have here is we'll have the site ready to go, so that way when we add our feature lines, we'll be able to add them to that particular site or the site that we want them to be. At this point, I want to move on to some of the settings tabs, or the settings tab inside of Tool Space. And once we're in there, what I want to look at is the styles for those feature lines that we were talking about. So to get to our feature line styles under the Settings tab, we will need to expand the Generals folder. In the Generals folder, we can go ahead and expand the multi-purpose styles. And inside the multi-purpose styles, we can see that there are feature line styles here. Right now, for the Phoenix, Arizona DWT file, we've got some styles set up for, they're based on color, so color 20, 30, 50, that sort of thing. I think we'll address that later. I'd like to maybe update this, get some different styles in here that are more meaningful. But anyhow, at this particular moment in time, let's go ahead and just take like this color 20, and I'm going to rename that and give it the color or the line type that I want for this particular example that I'm trying to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and it brings up the feature line style dialog box. So I can make this some modifications. So under information, I'm going to go ahead and convert this from color. And I'm just going to say this is my finish grade styles. Oh. And let's just say this is for finish grade site design. Oh. And then under the display, we can go ahead and set some colors to this that are going to be meaningful to us. You can also set a line type. Sometimes it's nice to set a line type because these feature lines get drawn on top of other line work. And if you can't physically grab them or select them, sometimes it makes it a little difficult to work with. So I like to use like a line type style that has maybe something that sticks out away from the line work, like a swale line type or a railroad type line type. You know, something not very complicated, but just something that you can physically grab, and I'll show you that here in a moment on why and how that will work better for us. So I'm just going to choose a fence line line type for this, since it's already there. So at this point, we've got the style created. You know, we copied color 20. We renamed it, call it finish grade, told it the description, went over to the display tab, gave it a color that we thought would work for us, and also a line type that we thought we could select and grab when we're working with these feature lines. At this point, we'll go ahead and hit OK, and we should see that new feature line style in the feature line styles category. So the next step we'll want to do is we'll go to the commands for creating the feature lines. So I know that um, the feature lines that we're going to be working with are going to be underneath the grading. So if we go to the grading folder here, and if you expand this down here, you can see create feature lines along alignment or from alignment, that sort of thing. What we'll be doing next here is we'll be drawing feature lines. And so what we'll do here is we're going to go in and make some modifications to the command. So when we run the command, it'll be preloaded with the style that we want to use. So that style that we just created, we'll go ahead and assign that, and we'll tell it what site we want that stuff to go on to as well. So when we draw that feature line, so let's take a right click on this and go to the edit command settings. And then inside the edit command settings, what we're going to do here is we're going to look at the feature line creation. So we'll expand that. And we want to give the feature lines some names, and those will come in handy later on. So we'll talk about that when we get to that point. But it'd be nice to make sure we have that set up for this. So feature line naming. So we're going to go ahead and drop that down and tell it to be true. So that will name it. The next thing we want to look at is the default styles. So that style that we just created, we're going to go ahead and use that as the default. The nice thing about these command settings, though, is that you can change them per task. So for right now, we're going to go ahead and start drawing in. You know, when we get back into the drawing, we're going to be drawing feature lines for the road and the different things for the parking and things like that. And we want to use that particular style. But let's say we get done with that task and now we want to work with the buildings or this or that, and we want a different style. Then we can go back to the command settings and change it to that style for that particular need at that particular moment. So that way when you're doing all the creation for the buildings, that sort of thing, you can have a different style set up. But anyhow, let's go ahead and choose the style that we've created here a moment ago. So we're going to go to E&A, finish grade. So I'll hit that. And then the next thing we want to look at is the default naming format. So let's go ahead and expand that. And then right here, it says the feature line naming template. We're going to go ahead and expand this. The counter is set to 1. That's fine. So what we're going to do here, instead of just calling it a feature line, let's tell it it's a finished ground feature line. And then at that particular moment in time, we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And then we'll start getting into the drawing and we'll start applying some of these feature lines. Or drawing some of the feature lines, designing them, that sort of thing. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and close my tool space and get back into our drawing. What I'd like to do is go in and start drawing in some of this line work here. When I say line work, I should say feature line work that will depict the gutter on both sides of this road. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to come back up to the Home tab, and in the Create Design panel of the ribbon here, we've got this feature line command. So we're going to go ahead and drop that down. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and create feature lines. And in that feature line here, we should see some of those commands and things that we put together, right? So we just talked about how setting those commands up before we start to create these feature lines. As we come back up to this create feature line, because we're going to do that quite a few times through this process of a project. Now it's set up correctly and it's set up the way we want it. So it has the site name that we want. It's got the counter on there that we had just talked about. It's already got the style, right? So we already did that. So essentially all we have to do is activate the command, hit OK, and that gets us down the road a little bit quicker. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to hit OK. And now it's asking us here for a starting point down here in this command line. So I'm going to zoom into this area on the kind of the connection to this existing road or alley. And so I'm going to zoom into that, and we're going to start to define our first feature line. And this again is going to be at the gutter line. So right now I can see that we've got an existing elevation. We've got some slopes and some different elevations as we kind of maybe thought process this thing out. You know, before we started to kind of get into this particular moment in time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick on this this end point here where this line intersects this existing gutter. So I'm going to use my O snaps. Maybe we'll get those O snaps turned on. And down here at the status line here, maybe make sure it's set to end point for right now. I'm going to go back up to my drawing. So I'm going to pick on that point. Now, if you look at your command line here, it says draw feature line, it says specify the elevation, or we can choose a surface. Now, we know that on this particular project that our survey crews went out there and topoed the area. So they provided us with topo information, spot elevations existing. They also gave us the existing surface. So we can go ahead and choose that surface. So I'm going to type in S for surface, or I can actually select it. If I hover over my mouse, I can select it as well. So I'm going to hit return. Now it's telling me the surface elevation is 9731, and that should match that magenta line, or not line, but that magenta text that we have up there as well. Also look at the surface that it's using here. It's telling us it's using the Survey 10-000, so that's our existing surface. So if you've got multiple surfaces, you'll want to make sure you say select surface, and then you make sure you got the correct surface. So in this particular case, we have one surface, and that's all it defaults to that one surface. So anyhow, we'll hit return, and now we can see that we've got a feature line that's starting on that gutter of existing elevation of 1397.31. Now we got the ability to pick the next point, or we can pick an arc, things like that. If you're looking down here at your command line, well, we're simply going to pick this next point here, and then we'll type in that elevation. So I'm going to pick on that point here with my OSNAP running, and now it's telling me here I can specify how I want to get to that point. If you look at your command line, you can do it by a grade, so you can type in 2% or 5.7 for that matter, if you look at our plan, or we can go with an elevation, a difference. We can select another surface, or we can transition. And we'll talk a little bit about some of these other commands when we get to that point. But right now, we're going to go ahead and use the elevation. So I'm going to go ahead and pick on that, and I'm actually just going to hover over, mouse over it, and I'm going to pick on it. So that's telling me over here the elevation is 9731. Well, it just kind of defaulted to the last elevation. That's not what we want. So we want to type in that elevation. So it's going to be 1397.70. And then we'll go to the next point. I think that's an intersection. So I just typed in intersection of the command line so I could get the OSNAP to that. That's 97.76. So I'm going to 97, 1397.76. And you notice it defaulted to what I specified last as elevation. So I'll hit return. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to continue down the road until I get to the end. And I think I'm going to carry this all the way out to the end of the road here. So just bear with me, watch as I go through the process, and you'll see I'm using the same commands that we just spoke of. $1397.90. I'm going to pick these endpoints right here where these returns kind of take off, because when we start to draw the gutter for this, I want to have that point there. I want to have that elevation there, so I have something to snap to. And pick up that elevation based off of this slope that we've got here from 9790 to 9785. So this will allow us to use that transition. So I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to pick the point here, and you can see that we've got the T for transition. So I'm going to transition. I don't want to give it that elevation. I want to let it do the math. So it's going to calculate the distance between this point here and this point elevation here, and it's going to figure out the slope and then give it that elevation. So I don't have to do the math for that. So the next area here is I want to pick on this point here. So I'm going to go here, and so I'm going to go back and type in E for elevation at the command line. So I'm just going to pick on that. And so now I can type in the 1397.85. And you can notice when we set up our feature line style, we use that fence line. That might be a little bit big. We'll reduce that size a little bit, but it allows us to select those feature lines when we want to do things with them. As you can see, we're drawing those feature lines right on top of the other lines. That we don't have to worry too much about our display order and things like that as we're defining things. It just makes it easier for us to manipulate or work with those feature lines. So again, like I said, I'm going to continue on down the road here. I'm going to go to the next point. So it's going to be here. Make sure I've got the elevation. I'll be 1398.05. And I'm going to do the transition once again. So I'm going to type in T for transition after I pick that point. So down here I can pick the T for transition. I don't want to figure out what that elevation needs to be. So I'm going to transition from here. I'm going to pick that point. I'm going to transition from here, hit return. And then I'm going to pick this point here, and then type in my elevation of 1398.11. So make sure we pick on elevation, and then we got the elevation command set, and then we'll type in the 1398.11, and that will finish that up. And I'll continue down, like I said. I'm just going to roll down here to the next one. I'm going to do the same thing. And we'll come down here and type in the elevation, 1398.31. Pick the next point. We'll transition. So I'm going to go T for transition. I'll pick my next point. Transition. So I'm going to hit return. Go to my next available elevation. Pick on that. Come back down to the command line. We'll type in, or not type, you can, but I'm going to pick on it, say E for elevation, prompt for the elevation. With this is going to be 1398.37. Move on down the road to the next. So I'm going to pick on this, and that is going to be an elevation. So let's see, 1398.55. And I'm going to go ahead and pick on this. I'm going to go T for transition. I'm going to come back up and grab this elevation here. And this is going to be 1398. Whoops. Command line. I'm going to type, make sure I activate the elevation prompt. And I'm at 1398.65. And then we'll go to the end. And this is going to be an elevation as well. So I'm going to just type in 1398.85. I'm going to hit return to exit out of the command, and now we've got our first feature line drawn into the plan. So what I'd like to do now that we're starting to do this three-dimensional work, and I want to see this, you know, how does it look elevation wise, things like that. I'm going to do a couple things to kind of set us up, and I think this is a good way to work. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to come back up to the tabs here on the ribbon, and we're going to choose the View tab. And then under the View tab, we've got this panel called Model Viewports. So we're going to go ahead and use some of the viewport commands that we've got. So I'm going to go ahead and pick on that command. And it's going to give me the options to choose some of these predefined ones. This 3 left works well for what we're going to do today. So I'm going to go ahead and pick on that. And what this does for us, it allows us to kind of resize these a little bit. If you've got dual monitors, it's kind of nice to expand this whole session over your dual monitors and then put this viewport split right here down the 2 monitors, and then you've got 2 big work areas, things like that. The reason for this is that it works well when you're working with 3 dimensions here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that feature line, maybe the existing base map, just so we have some something to kind of base our rotation on. I'm going to right click on that, and I'm going to go to Object Viewer. This can take a few moments. Once the Object Viewer is up, what we can do here is we can kind of rotate this around a little bit and kind of see those elevations that we got drawn. So I'm going to go ahead and pan down, and you can see that there's our feature line right there. So what I'm going to do is I want to set that viewport now, and you can use the view cube too if you're you know, familiar with working with that. You just pick on one of the corners of the front, and you can just start to rotate that around. But to set the view the way we want that with that particular vantage point or 3-dimensional view, we'll just go ahead and set it. So right click inside your object viewer and tell it to set the view. And now when it's done there, I'm going to go ahead and exit out of the viewer. And now that it's done that, now you can kind of see the relationship between the existing topo and the actual view of the 3-dimensional line or feature line that we've drawn. So as I highlight that, you can kind of see that take shape here inside the plan view as well. So now at this point, we'll go ahead and draw in the feature line for the center line of the drive area. So I'm going to start back down in this area here, the intersection there of the alley or street connection, and we'll go ahead and draw that in. So again, it's the same process that we did with this feature line that we've drawn across the top. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to pick on the surface. I'm going to pick these elevations and use the sub commands for transitioning if needed, elevations, slopes if I need to, that sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and walk through this quickly. So I'm going to back up the Home tab, create Design Panel. I'm going to go Feature Line Commands. I'm going to create that feature line. Again, this is all set up in those commands we set up earlier, so we're good to go there. So I'm just going to hit OK. And my starting point on the command line is asking me. So I'm going to pick on this line here. So that's the existing gutter in the road or alley there. And I'm going to go with the surface again. So I'm going to type in S for surface, hit return. That should match up to what we have in the magenta, hopefully. So it's saying it's 97.28.4, so I got 97.29. So I'm going to accept that surface value. I'm going to hit return, and I'm going to continue down, pick my next point. I'm just picking in the center of these or nearest to these donuts that have been placed here. So I'm going to pick on the elevation, and I'm going to pick use the 9770. So I'm going to say 1397.70, And we're just going to keep on moving on with this. So I'm going to pick on the next elevation, type that in. 1397.76. I'm going to pick this low point here. And looks like it's 97.65. Come back down here, 1397.65. And you can see the slope continues here based on their preliminary design of 0.25. So I'm going to run this up till I find my next elevation. I'll go ahead and pick in here. So that elevation is 1398.19. And then we've got this end point here. So I'll pick on that, and that's going to be 98.21. So on the command line, I'm at 1398.21. I'm going to hit return, accept the feature line, and like we talked earlier, since we set up this three-dimensional view over here, you can go ahead and see that you've got your feature line here as well. So you highlight it in the three-dimensional view. You'll notice it over here in your plan view as well. So again, what I like about this is if I've made some kind of a typing error, things like that, it will end up showing that spike, or it won't look correctly. So it's nice to have that three-dimensional view as you're designing or laying out these feature lines. So the next thing I want to look at is how do we maybe start adding these feature lines to a surface. And then what I'd like to also talk about is how to create maybe one of these pads for the building area or envelope, and then copy that around to the other sites. Building envelope areas, and that's what I think we'll be working on next here. So let's start off with the surface. Let's start preparing a surface. Let's get something kind of going there just so we can see that. How do we bring these feature lines into a surface? That sort of thing. One of the easiest ways I know of is by simply grabbing these feature lines in plan view, and then if you right click, you'll get the pop-up menu, and then we can add to surface as break lines, so we can convert these to break lines. Surface will use it, we'll get triangulation, that sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and pick on that command there. It brings up a select surface dialog box. If you notice here in the surfaces, we've only got the one surface. So what we can do here is if we move over here to this plus sign, we can go ahead and actually create the new surface, and that creates the brings up the dialog box for creation. So let's give it a name. I'm going to call this finish grade, and I'm going to put the 000 behind it so I know that's my current finish grade site surface. And then here I'll give it a description. What is it for? Says, maybe this is the final finish grade, and say maybe finish grade site, something to that effect. And then here we have the opportunity to choose the style that we want to see as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's get this thing ready to go. So I'm going to say this is a proposed site, and maybe just for workability, visual, that sort of thing, I'm going to go with a proposed. I think that's a 1/2 foot. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And once we hit OK, we're going to go into a back to the select surface, I guess, and then we can select that surface. Now we've got two surfaces in there. And if you were to go back to your tool space, you'll see that this surface is part of tool space as well. So let's go ahead and hit OK. And then what ends up happening here is it asks us to add the break line. So we're converting them feature lines, and converting them to break lines. So let's give it a description on what that is. I'm pretty brief on the description unless I really need to know exactly what that is, so I can either remove it from the surface at a later date. For this example, I'm just going to call it a break line, break lines or whatnot. So the next thing we want to talk about is the supplementary factors. The distance we'll take and run across the polyline here, or I should say feature line. It'll break that up every 100 feet or 10 feet. So since we defined these feature lines, and we took a long stretch from this point, up to the next, there might be, let's say there's 100 feet in there. We want a little bit better triangulation in that. Yet we don't want to update the feature line or modify the feature line, so we can add additional information to that. So it'll supplement the every 10 feet in here and break that up, giving you nice triangulation. The mid-ordinate distance now, that's going to come into play around returns, let's say. You got these little returns here that are coming back into the parking there. You can turn that down so you have better triangulation around that curve. And basically what that does is it'll allow you to supplement, or it'll give you the feel or look as the curve is being defined from the tin lines. Keep in mind, tin lines cannot be curved. There's no curved tin line, so this will give you the appearance of a tin line. And we can look at that as they get defined inside these areas here, so we can understand that a little bit better. But anyhow, for what we're doing right now, I'm going to go ahead and change these two factors. I'm going to break this down to 10 feet, so I'll have this broken up every 10 feet. And I'm going to set that mid-ordinate distance to maybe a 1/4 of a foot. Let's see what that does for us. If we need to, we can adjust it later. So I'm going to hit OK. And now at this point, we've defined these figure lines to the surface as break lines. And I think if you noticed here in the drawing, you can see that first contour starting to kind of take place. So as I highlight that contour, it highlights the surface, and then it brings up the contextual tab here saying, hey, this is finished ground, 000, and then it gives us those standard or most typically used commands to modify that particular surface. So now that we've got that in the, we've got our surface created from those two feature lines that we've created. Let's go ahead and go to Tool Space, Prospector tab, and then we'll look at that surface. So there's our new surface. And you can see that the break lines have been added to it. We should have 2 break lines. So with the break lines in, surface created, things like that, let's go ahead and maybe change the surface style so that we can see that supplementing data that was added to those long feature lines. So in order to do that, we'll go back into the surface here. We're going to right click on the surface name, go to the surface properties. And under the surface properties, we can do this a couple different ways. We can leave the triangulation, or I'm sorry, the style the way we've got it, that 0.5, and just go to the edit. And inside the edit, we can just quickly turn on the triangles just so we can see them. And then when we're done, we can turn them back off, so we're not overriding or reworking a style. I just want to see these for a moment in time. So I'm going to hit OK, apply, and then you can see in the drawing here that this has been broken up every 10 feet. And now with that fence line type to help us work with those feature lines like we talked about earlier, we can highlight that feature line and we can see that, the vertices between that are from here to here, and it broke it up every 10 feet from here to here, so on and so forth. So being able to see that helps us with the visual, right? So seeing the 10 lines up against the feature line, how it broke that up, that gives us some feedback visually. So at this point, I'm just going to go back up and I'm going to change that back so that we do not see those triangles at this moment in time. So I'll just apply that and we're good to go. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and start looking at how we can create these building pads three-dimensionally. So we'll have our finished ground, or not so much our finished ground, but our finished floor, our slope in our driveway, the step between the driveway and the finished floor, that sort of thing. And then we're going to copy that around each one of these pad sites or building envelopes. So when I was talking about the building footprint and the quarter of a foot step or drop into the garage, not the driveway. So we will go to a sketch to demonstrate what we're talking about. So basically what we're seeing here is we're seeing the building envelope in red, and then from approximately 20 feet back to about this area here where we've drawn this line, this is going to be the garage, and that should slope out at a 0.1%. So that's sloping out, and then in this particular area here, we've got a quarter of a foot drop between the finished floor and the start of the garage. So in essence, we're looking at this 1/4 inch step, which would be here, and then we're going to run up our finished floor. So that'll be finished floor, and then this is going to be the slope outside of the the garage area here. So that'd be your garage slope here at that 0.1%, I should say. So the way we want to do that here is we're going to create a polyline around the building of the finished floor. And that's what, once we have that at the elevation that we're specifying here, so on this particular unit here, we're going to be at 9860, so we'll have a 9860, and so that'll be a polyline or a feature line eventually at that elevation. So it'll be 139860. And then what we'll do here is we're going to drop this down that 1/4 of a foot, and then we're going to project that out at 0.1%. And I think within this area here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show us how we can use a grading object to attach to this 1/4 of a foot low feature line from the finished floor, and then we'll grade that out using a grading object, and it'll create a small surface of this area here, and then we'll pick up some of this line work here. And what we'll do is then we'll be able to run around this polyline of the garage area, and it'll pick up that slope. So for example, if this is 19 feet from here to here, then maybe the elevation is here to here, and maybe this is the 20, so then that goes out here. So this will all constantly be that 0.1% around the garage area. So we're going to go ahead and move into the CAD drawing, and we will create the polyline necessary for the feature line at that 139860, and then we're going to create a feature line for that 1/4 inch step below, and then we're going to have to offset that a little bit in between here, because what we need to know is that so that's this point here and this point here, so there's a little bit of an offset there, maybe a 1/4 of a foot, something like that. What we need to know, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is that you need to have some separation horizontally so that when the triangulation takes place within this area here, that we're not having a vertical face. Vertical face would be, same elevation, uh, and with no offset. So not necessarily the same elevation, but it'll be an elevation and an elevation that holds the same. It's basically a right angle here off of that finished floor. We can't have that. So then once we have this point here, then we'll create that grading object off of that. So let's go ahead and move to the drawing, and we'll take a look at what we can do and how we're going to do that. So back in the drawing here, I've already taken and copied the footprint or the building elevation from the original drawing, and I pasted that information up here. And then I also went as far as creating that 20-foot offset back into the building envelope, so we can have the area onto which the garage will take shape. So like I said, these are basic polylines, nothing special. So we're going to convert this polyline to a feature line, and we're going to use that elevation that we talked about in that sketch for this first building. So if we take a look at this, is finished floor elevation of 9860. So let's go ahead and start that. So we will use the feature line commands on the Home tab, create design panel. We'll drop that down. What we're going to do here is we're going to create a feature line from an object. And what it's doing here is it's asking us to select a line or a polyline. So I'm going to go ahead and select the first line, a set of line work here. This is going to be the finished floor. I'm going to hit return. And what we're going to do here is we're going to have the same site. This here, since this command is set up differently, there's a different command for creating a feature line from an object. And we can go back in like we did earlier, right? We can go back into the tool space settings tab and change that command for the create feature line commands, and we could tell it what style to use in there as well. Right now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply change it here, and we will put that to the finished grade, just like what we had with the rest of the roadway stuff that we've done so far. So we've got the correct site, we've got the finished grade. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the name for that feature line as well. And what we're going to do down here is we're going to erase that existing entity, and then also we're going to assign an elevation. So we're going to hit OK. It's going to take us into an assign elevation dialog box. And inside here we can do a couple things. We can create it from the elevation, simply type it in. We can go in from a surface and use it from a surface as well. That's kind of handy, and we'll talk more on that at a later time. What will work best for us today on this particular example is the elevation. So then we could simply type in that 139860 that we see down here with the finished floor. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in. So 139860, that's my finished floor. And now I've got my finished floor elevation. If you take and type in ID, the command line, and look at that, it should tell you the same 139860. If we look at it here in our three-dimensional view, we should see that hovering up there at that 139860. So next I'm going to go ahead and draw in a polyline at that offset of 1/4 of a foot, and then we'll create a feature line from that, and that elevation will be that 35.35, so it'll be 9835. So let's go ahead and just draw a simple polyline across there. We'll extend that out beyond the footprint of the garage area, and we'll give it that elevation then. I'm just kind of extending this out. There's all kinds of ways we can do that, I guess, but extend that out, thin this out. Now this feature line here is going to have to be on a different site because we're going to draw feature lines on top of this data when we're done. So I'll step you through that process here. So this feature line here, we're going to create a new site called Garage, and we'll start to build the feature line from that. So I'm going to go up to feature line. We're going to create it from the object. Once again, I'm going to pick the object, I'm going to hit return, and now I'm asked here I can create a site and put it on that site and give it the style and color. When you're doing one-offs like this, you may not necessarily need to go in and provoke the commands to run like we did earlier, run the style into it and the feature name, things like that. The only time I really do the reset those settings in the commands is when I'm doing a lot of repeated work, and we'll start getting back into that here later on. But when we start to do the rest of the gutter for the parking areas and sidewalks and things like that, we'll repeatedly continue to use those same styles and that same naming convention and the same site, that sort of thing. But anyhow, enough of that. Let's go ahead and make the new site, and we can do that from here. So we're going to pick on the icon here, creates the new site. Let's just call this Garage, something to that effect. So I'm going to go ahead and give it the name. And say for garage only or something like that, slope or something like that. Okay, so now we've got the new site. We'll go ahead and give it the name. A name is fine. And then for the style, for all practical purposes, we're only going to use this one. So let's just say color 30 for now. We're going to erase the object when we're done, and we're going to assign the elevation just like we did earlier. So I'll hit return, and we're going to use that same option here. So we're going to go elevation, and then we're going to type in that elevation, and that elevation is going to be 1398.35. Okay, and now you can see that we've got the feature line that we're going to need to start our drive, not our driveway, our garage slope. So the next step here is to create a grading object out here. Then we're going to create this kind of a plane at 2%, and this is just going to be kind of a stepping stone to be able to get, like we were talking in that sketch, get the line work at the proper elevation, because this elevation is going to be a little bit lower than this. As you have those steps, that those elevations are going to be different. It's all going to be at that 0.1%, but they'll be different elevations. So it'll be easier to run this across there, and I'll show you how we'll do that. But first, let's go ahead and create the grading object for that. So under the Home tab in the Design, Create Design palette, there's an area called Grading. So we're going to go ahead and drop that down. What we're going to do here is we're going to go to the Grading Creation tool. So we'll pick on that. And it gives us a toolbar, allows us to create a group, and also allows us to create the criteria that we need, things like that. So let's go ahead and step through that. Let's first create the group, or actually the site. I'm sorry, we're going to use that garage site. And then this is going to be able to allow us to create the group. So we're in the create grading group. So let's give it a name. We'll just kind of go with the same site name, kind of that same feel. So I'm going to go type in garage for that. So that's the grading group. So we got a site called garage. We got a grading group called garage. And then we just say for slope in garage or something like that. Oh. And we'll hit OK. And so now we've got the group, we've got the site, and a grading group grading object, I should say, can only come off of a feature line if it is on the same site. So that's why we're creating that extra site. So here's some of the grading criteria that are set. What we want to do here is we're going to create a simple one. So if we come over here, we can go ahead and make the grading criteria that we need. Let's give it in the information tab, we can give it a name. We'll call that garage slope or something like that. And then for the criteria tab, what we're going to do here is we're going to go out a distance. So basically what that's going to do is we're going to, what's the distance? Let's say maybe 30 feet, just so we got enough to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 30 feet. And we're going to do it as a slope. And the slope format, let's go ahead and change that to something that's meaningful. So we're going to say grade. And then that grade, we know that's a 0.1%. So let's go ahead and type in that 0.1%. We'll go ahead and apply it. So now you can see that we've got that criteria setting here inside the creation tools. So in order to create the actual grading object, what we'll do is we'll come back up to the button here to create the object. So pick on that. And now it's asking here in the command line, select the feature line. So again, this feature line that we're going to select needs to be on the same site as the grading group and criteria. So what we'll do here is we'll go ahead and select it. Now it's asking us down in the command line once again to select the side that we want. So we're going to go ahead and pick on the side that we want. Do we want to run the entire length? We can, and we'll go from here to here. That's fine. So we'll just hit return. And then the distance is 30. Something that's kind of nice about this criteria is kind of a baseline for things. So at the command line, we can actually override that. If we wanted to go out further or less, we could actually type that in down here. For what we're doing, 30 foot's fine. So, and there's the grade. We can change the grade by typing it in here as well. And I think I may have typed it in wrong. It should be a negative. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go negative 0.1%. And I'll hit return, escape. And now if you look up here, you can see that we've got a grading object that's drawn that shows us the that plane that we're going to need. And so then at that point, what we can do here is we'll use some of the new or another a tool in the create features to run the surface or drape the feature line on top of this this garage surface that we just created from the grading object. We haven't created the surface yet, but we'll do that. So let's do that first, and then we'll go in and create that feature line. So in order to create the surface, we'll go ahead and grab the feature line and this target line from the grading object. Go ahead and right click on it like we did earlier. We're going to add that to a surface. We don't have a temporary or that garage surface in here, so we'll go over to the plus sign and we will add the surface name. And let's just call this garage slope. And let's just keep it tens and points. That'll be fine. We'll hit OK. And now we're going to add that information or those target lines, feature lines to that surface that we just created. And give it a description of break lines. And we can add some additional information here if we want. It's straight grade, straight elevation type stuff. I don't think we're going to necessarily need that, so I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm going to hit OK. And now you can see the big triangle in there. And again, if you kind of keep in mind, this is just that constant 0.1% slope from that 1/4 of a foot offset. And you can see that here when you look at it in the plan as well. So if we try to rotate this around a little bit, I'm going to grab that. I'm going to go to the object viewer once again and see if I can kind of rotate that in on a side view so you can kind of see what we're talking about here. This should resemble that sketch that we were kind of talking about earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and right click inside my drawing area, go ahead and set that view. And now you should be able, it's not too good of a view, but I think you get the idea here. You can see the step in here. And now you can do some ID points too. So if I type in ID in the command line, and then with my OSNAP running, I should be able to come up here and pick on that. Say that should be the 9860 finished floor. If I come over here and grab this endpoint here, ID endpoint, that should be the 35, which it is, and then this should taper down at 2%, or I guess 0.1%. I'm sorry. So that's lower yet. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and create some feature lines and associate it with this particular surface. So back up to the Home tab, create design panel, feature line. We're going to go ahead and create it from objects. We'll pick this simple polyline. We'll hit return, and let's get it on the right site. We want to be on finished ground site now, because all this preparation and whatnot, we're trying to get a grading plan, so it's all going to be on that finished ground site. We'll go ahead and name that. Let's give it the proper color and style that we're using throughout the the roadway, sidewalk, that sort of thing. And we'll go ahead and tell it to erase the existing entities, and we're going to assign the elevation. We'll hit OK. And now in this dialog box here, we're going to be able to take advantage of from surface. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create that from the garage slope, so it'll pick up all those elevations. I'm going to turn this intermediate grade points off, so we don't have that. And we'll hit OK. So now what it's just done there is it's created a grading feature line, or a feature line based off of the criteria of that surface at that 0.1%. Let's go back up to the same area here, feature lines, create from object, and then we'll go ahead and pick this, and we'll do the same thing. So now we're going to go back in, we're going to say here, make sure it's on the right site, choose the same style, assign the elevations, hit OK. We're going to go from the surface, we're going to turn intermediate grade breaks off, hit OK. Now we've got grading, or feature lines, I should say. We got feature lines that we'll use in our grading surface. So now what we can do at this point is we've got this one set up for that first building, right, up in the north west corner. So what we can do here then is we can copy these, or this group of feature lines, and we can place that into our drawing area. And then we'll just copy that to the next one, so on and so forth. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and copy the building envelope that we created to each pad site. Now we got to keep in mind here that this has an elevation. There's an elevation here, so I think that was the first one here was the 9860. So what I want to do, and what I like to do, is I'll draw out a polyline out here at that elevation, and then I'll OSNAP from this XYZ to this XYZ, and I'll move it down to that specified elevation. There's probably other ways of doing it, but that's the way I'm going to go ahead and do it today. So I'm going to type in polyline at the command line there. I'm going to pick on this corner here and just kind of draw this up. And then, right, like I said, here we'll just change that elevation to what the finished floor elevation needs to be. So I right click on that. I'm going to go to the properties, and then inside the properties here I can just change that elevation to 1398.60. And then I'll move over to the next one, do the same thing. Go to the properties of this one, type in the elevation, that is 1398.75, 1398.75. Oh, I missed that there, sorry. 1398. So then once I've got, this all staged up, then I should be able to grab the building envelopes and just paste them right to that elevation. So let's go back over to our building here. We'll grab these feature lines that are on that site called Finish Grade, and we'll go ahead and copy that with a base point. And I'm going to pick on this end point here. I've got my OSNAP running, so I'm going to go ahead and pick on that, and then I'll just move it into the proper area on our site plan. So Control V, and then I should be able to pick on that. And now this should retain the same elevation because we snapped to the X, Y, Z coordinate there. So let's just double check it. So if I grab this feature line, again, those X's are coming in kind of handy because we got lines on top of lines. So we're at 98.60, 39, or 1398.60. So that's what it is. So then let's go to the next one. We'll copy this one in, Control V. And now that should take us down to the elevation of that polyline, so on and so forth. So that should be 98.75. So back into list, 98.75. So now at this point, we've got, this surface here we've already started, so we can start adding this stuff to the surface, right? So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll go to our next part here. So you can see the surface here. You can see our new building envelopes at the elevations, and you can see them kind of highlighting down there on the plan view down here. So let's go ahead and add that to the surface, and then we'll start working on some of the drive parking towards the building here. So in order to do that, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go back into let's open tool space, I guess. We're going to do the same thing, but I want to look at our surface here. So we got that finished grade surface. There's some of the definitions. So we should have those two break lines that we put in there earlier. So let's go ahead and put these building envelopes into the surface as well. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these feature lines here. Now keep in mind, if we did not add these to the surface already, when you want to add them all at once, we could just grab one of these and right click and say select similar or something like that. But if I'm going to go through this step-by-step process, this works out pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on that after I've done selected my feature lines, and then we're going to go ahead and add to surface as break lines. Make sure we choose the proper surface. We'll hit OK and give this a description, break lines, maybe building. And let's add some data across there. Let's see here. No, I think we're going to be fine. I'm going to turn that off for a moment. So basically, we'll just go ahead and add the envelopes to the surface. And now that you can see, you should see some contours starting to run, from this gutter back in between the grades, of the building, that sort of thing. So we're kind of getting in that, we're getting our buildings in there. We got one side of our street in there from the gutter to the one side. Now we'll go ahead and draw in some more feature lines for gutter around the parking area, things like that. So let's go ahead and stage that up and get that going. So I'm going to reset this view here so that I can see some of the feature lines that we'll be drawing down in this parking area, things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a few of these line work here, feature lines, surface, that sort of thing, just so I have something kind of I can see to kind of rotate around. So after I've selected the things that I want to see, I'll go ahead and go to my object viewer. I'm just trying to make this a little bit more recognizable, I guess, if you'd like to say that. So somewhere in there. So what we're going to want to try to do now is, if this is the, I guess the center of the road, and then this is coming up. So we're going to want to take and run some gutter lines from the finished floor of the garage where the slope ends. And then we're going to come down and radius back into the gutter. So I think we'll be able to, we should be able to see that better with this kind of a view. So basically, once I've got it set to where I think I'm happy with it, I'm going to go ahead and right click on this, and I'm going to say set view. And then back here, I'll close this, but back up here, we should be able to see this a little bit better. I'm going to kind of move this down a little bit so I got a bigger view. And then over here, I'm going to go over and just kind of pan over into the plan. So I got a bigger plan view area. So now, like we said earlier, we can go in and draw some feature lines around the gutter area, kind of trying to start to build that curb and gutter for the apron or the drive up to the garage. So while I'm in this view here, I'm going to look at a couple things to see if this is staged up the way I need it. I know I'm going to be adding a feature line from this endpoint here, or this vertice that we created when we first drew this line work in here. So if I highlight the feature line here, it should show that point here. So I should be able to pick up on that elevation and bring this around. Now if we look at the building over here, it doesn't look like we have that endpoint there, so I want to be able to snap to that elevation on that particular building at that point. So what we'll do here then is we'll go to some of the commands that we can use. They're called quick edit commands. We'll talk a little bit more about these as well, but this would be the first time we're exposed to them. So I'm going to select the feature line. Once the feature line is selected, you can see here in my contextual tab that I've got the feature line. So we'll move to the edit geometry panel, and we will choose the insert PI. Now inside this insert PI, we can O-snap to the endpoint of this gutter line that's perpendicular or right angle to the building. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that. Now it's telling me it's 9833. So that's the 9833 I need. I'll hit return. And at this point, we'll continue to hit return until we get outside of the command. Now you can see with the hot grips here that we've got that PI that we need for the continuation of the feature line. So at this point, we'll go to the Home tab, and we'll go to the Create Design panel. We'll go to the feature lines. We're going to go ahead and create a feature line. Since we set those commands up earlier for creating feature lines, we told it what site to use, what name, what style. That stuff's already preloaded for us, so we don't have to make any decisions at this point. So at this step, we'll just hit OK, and it'll allow us to start drawing that feature line. What I want to do is I want to come over in this three-dimensional view so I can O-snap to that three-dimensionally. So I picked on that point. Now down the command line, you should see that 9833. That's the elevation that we were looking at just a moment ago. So I'm going to hit return. I'm going to pick back in this viewport here. So now I've activated it. So now I can come down this line here. I'm going to go ahead and pick on the next key point. I'll pick that point. And now I'm going to go in and say T for transition, because I'm going to transition along this line work. So I'm going to pick 2 points, 2 known points, 2 known elevations. It's going to calculate the distance and tell me what the slope is. So I'm going to type in T, like I said, hit return, and now I'm going to go in and activate the arc command, and I should be able to pick on this point here. And now, since I'm not sure what that elevation is or if it snapped to it properly, I can use the surface command and pull that from the surface that we created. So that'd be our finished ground. I'm not sure what surface it's selecting yet. Oh, actually it says up at the top here, finish ground 000. If it's different, then you could type in or select this and go to the dialog box and choose the proper one. So at this point, we've got a feature line that's drawn in here. Let's accept that elevation. And now we've got our feature line drawn in here at this point from the building, which would be here. And then if we come down around here, we should see that return, or the radius coming around and tying in to the gutter down here. So at this point, we can add that to the surface. So let's go ahead and grab that. We'll right click on it and say add to surface as break lines. Make sure we have the proper surface here. We'll hit OK. We'll tell it this is a break line. And at this point, I'm just kind of adding this so we can kind of see as we're building. I think what I'm going to do here also is I'm going to add this maybe every 5 feet or something like that for that supplementary data here. And then also, if you keep in mind, we've got a curve in here, so probably want to knock this mid-ordinate distance down a little bit. Maybe go to 0.15. So now you can see it's changed the outcome of that contour now. So now it's added that to the surface. You can see the contours are getting updated as we do that. I think the next step we want to do is we want to build some gutter off of this, or not gutter, but some curb, a curb and gutter section. The best way we can do that is we can create some grading object criteria, and then we can offset this from the gutter up to the top of curb. And what's kind of nice about that, the grading object, is that it allows you to make modifications to the baseline, this baseline being this feature line. So if I update this elevation here, it's going to automatically update the grading object as well. If you do a simple offset of this feature line over and up, then when I make that one modification here, I need to make it up here as well. So I want to keep that constant curb height of 0.5. So let's go to the Home tab, Create Design Panel, and then go to the Grading. And we'll go back to this grading creation tools. We did this earlier for the driveway slope, or the garage slope, I should say. So let's go in and create a group for finish grade stuff. So again, here we'll be looking at the site name. Let's see if this is finish ground site. And let's give it a group name. Let's just go finish ground site. Finish ground site design. We can create automatic surface creation, things like that. That does not work very well for what we're doing, so we're not going to mess with that. So we'll hit OK. OK here. So now we've got the group that we need, and that group tells it the site and all that. So let's look at some of the criteria that we have. We got 2:1 to daylight, 3:1. We got that new slope that we added here for the garage. And then here's the difference here. If you go into criteria sets, you can have different sets in here. So if you got different clients or different curb heights or different this, that, and the other, you can create criteria sets and then pull those in as you need them for that particular task. Since I don't see the grading criteria that we're going to need for a curb and gutter, we're going to go ahead and make that criteria like we did earlier. So we pick on the Create New button, and then here we'll go to the Information tab. We'll tell it what this is. So that's going to be curb gutter. Let's say 0.5 for the height. So go to the criteria, and this is where we'll change let's do relative elevation. And let's say 0.5 since we're going up. And then we'll do a distance. What's the distance? It's going to be 0.5. And that can be whatever you want, but that's what I'm going to use today. And after I've got the values set, I'll hit OK. And now you'll see the new criteria sitting and available for us to use. So now let's go ahead and put it back to use. So we'll come over here and create the grading object. So down here in the command line, select the feature. So we're going to select the green feature line that we just drew. And it's asking us to go to the side we want it to be on. So it's going to be on the left side. And it's asking us, do we want to run the entire length? I'm going to say no, because I don't want to run the grading object up into these feature lines here. So that's kind of a something you need to think about when you're working with these. We don't really want to run them into other things that don't necessarily need to be there. And I think maybe perhaps we probably transition this curb height down to 0 or something, you know, within a 5-foot length here. That's how we do it here, I believe, in the Omaha area. I'm not sure for you guys down in the Phoenix area. But anyhow, let's just say no for right now. And what it's doing is, you can see on the drawing there, it's allowing us to select a station. So if we're at station 0 here, I can come down to maybe where that 5-foot mark is roughly. And you can always adjust that, you know, out as needed. But I'm going to pick on that. You know, you hit return. And then the length, what we want to do is we want to come around, you know, maybe close to the end of that return there. So I'm just going to zoom in, kind of hit this point here. And it's telling me what the next station value is. You can type in and override that as well if you want. But and now it's asking us for the relative elevation. So we got that 0.5-foot high curb. So I'm going to hit return. That's the distance. We're offsetting 0.5 as well. So at this point, you should see in this three-dimensional view that we've got. I'm going to hit return to get out of that command. Or escape, I'm sorry. And then you can see up here in the drawing that you can see that we've got that first, you know, offset vertically and horizontally. So now that's this line work here is considered a target line, so that can be added just like we did with that surface for the drive garage area. We can do this as well. We can add this to the surface. So to add this target line here off of this grading object to the surface, we would want to basically grab the target line, and again we can right click on this and go to the command add to surface as break line and choose the proper surface, hit OK, give it the description. I'll just say it's curb break line, and we can go ahead and add, I think we said 5 feet on that as well. So now you can see how this is kind of coming in, hitting the curb, hitting the gutter, hitting the curb, and running up the curb. We've got a little something going here as well with some contours. But basically, as we continue to add our grading objects to this gutter line, we're starting to develop that look and feel of the design. So again, I'm activating the same command here. It's telling me select the grading side. I come over to the side. Do I want the entire run? I'm going to say no. That way I've got a choice to where I want to start and stop this. So maybe right up by the sidewalk, that maybe we got a transitioned curb and gutter that drops down by the sidewalk there. I'm not sure where we're or how we do that down in the Phoenix office. So I'm just going to select a point here. Mind my station. I'll just hit return. It looks like we got another sidewalk here, so I'm going to come up about right here for now, and we can adjust this when we're done. So it's saying the side, the height, the difference, that sort of thing. So now I've got another grading object in there, and now I can grab that, right, and go back and add that to the surface as well. Do the same thing here, curb, break line. And I think I'm going to put that down to 10, I guess. So now you can see it's starting to come along, and you can see here it's starting to jump up inside the sidewalk a little bit. Maybe we need some more curb and gutter here, so I'm going to do the same thing. Just kind of running through it now just to show you what you can be doing. So the side, I'm going to go to the starting point. This isn't going to ask me because this feature line already has a grading object based off of it, so it doesn't ask me if I want to do the entire feature line because it will not allow me to do that. It's smart enough or intelligent enough to know that it's already got a grading object associated with it. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick a point close to the sidewalk and come up close to my curb that I had drawn in previously, except the offset, the distance, that that sort of thing. Now I've got another grading object in there, and now I can go ahead and pick on this and right click on the menu there, add it to the surface, same thing, same deal, curb, brake line. And you may want to group all these all up at once too, you know what I mean? We're just using this as an example, so kind of get an idea on how we can do some of that. And so now you can see that's hitting, coming around and running through here. And as we further define this, the sidewalk and that sort of thing, it just gets better and better. At this particular moment in time, I think we're going to stop with this session. Some things we can think about here that we will look at on the second series is working in the sidewalk, adding a little bit more returns, things like that. Get the sidewalks, maybe get the ground elevation around the buildings, and then I think the next series will be the basins and things like that. But keep in mind, as we build this surface, we're allowed to put labels and stuff to this as well. So if we have the surface done, we go in and use some annotation, come back over here, and basically you're looking at a site or a surface, I'm sorry, and then you can tell it what you want, spot elevations, and there's proposed spots, different things like that. So we can physically grab these things, right, and hit add. Let's grab the surface that we want to label. Now I can come in here and say, what is that? Well, we would set up a style that you would need or want, right? But that's the gist of it. Now, if we make a modification to any of this, these labels are going to be updated, things like that. One other thing we didn't really touch on here, but we will do it more, but just for a little heads up, these feature lines that we grab here, we can come back in and grab some of the quick edit tools. So under the contextual tab, you can see that we've got a feature line, and inside the edit elevation panel, we can go ahead and pick on this quick elevation editor. And then what we do is we can hover around on this and see the different slopes that's being generated. We can go in and physically pick on that elevation. So you got that 13, 97, 96. If I pick on that down in the command line, I'm allowed to type in the elevation that I want. So therefore it would change the slope, and it would change the surface, and it would change the grading object as well. That grading object here will update with that change as well. So let's provoke a change here. So I'm going to say 13, 97, and let's maybe just say 92 or something like that. We're just trying to get a change in there. So now as that gets updated, you can see that the elevation was updated. We'll go back in. Let's look at tool space really quick, and we'll just take a look and make sure that the surface is being updated. So it looks like the surface is being updated automatically, so you can turn that on and off depending on what you're doing. If you're doing small changes in a big site surface, that sort of thing, you may not want to have automatically turned on, so you're not changing a little bit and everything has to rebuild. But that's kind of it for right now. I think what we'll do, like I said earlier, we're going to go in and keep developing this on the second series. So if you have questions or whatnot, just please email me at dcaven@eacg.com, and I will try to answer your questions, and you can call me as well. Thank you.